Hello everybody, can you hear me okay? Please let me know how the sound like. If you have any question, please type your questions in the commentary box and I will answer them. First let me know if the sound is okay. You can hear me okay. Hi, hello Ajahn from Sami Viachi. How's the explosion aftermath? Are you affected by the explosion in Beirut? From Jiranan Jingjit กราบนมัสการหลวงพ่อค่ะ Can you let me know if the sound is okay? Antonio Dutra. Hello, it's okay, Tanajan. Thank you for having us. Sometimes I perceive energy in different parts of the body. This is a mental distraction. It's like a subtle movement. Well, whatever you experience, the Buddha said you should treat them as anicca, dukkha, anatta. Whether it's physical or mental, they come and go, they rise and cease. Sometimes there's nothing you can do anything about it. So you should not react to them. Just be aware of them and let them be. Then you will not have any dukkha. If you react, if you wonder, you might become afraid. So just treat them like any other things in life. They are all anicca, dukkha, anatta. They come and go. Anicca, anatta, you cannot control them or stop them. So just let them be. Then you will have no dukkha. Morris Toy, Anumodana Satu. How are you, Morris? Are you working now? Or are you still not working? From Antonio Dutra. Thank you, Ajahn Satu. If this feeling happened during meditation, just ignore it, because it can become a distraction. Okay? Sami Viachi is lack of generosity in past lives the cause for not finding a job in this life? Well, as far as karma is concerned, it's very difficult or complicated to say which is which. But normally, if you give if you have generosity and you gave a lot in your past life, you will tend to be well supported financially in this life, either by having lots of jobs offer or have lots of jobs to do. So what you give will come back to you what you give in your past life will come back to you in this lifetime. So be generous, and you'll make a lot of friends, and you'll be happy giving. Morris Twai, I asked him, is he still working? And he said, yes, I work at the airport now, Prajan. Matthew Khan, I am currently between jobs and surviving off savings. How can I balance practice with looking for more work? Well, I think your priority now should be looking for more work. If you find it that you need more money to survive. But once you have enough money to survive, then you should then practice with the time that you allow to have for practice. First, you have to survive. You have to keep the body fed, because without the body you cannot practice. But you don't have to work to get too much money, more money than you can use. You just work enough to survive, have enough money to pay for your expenses, and then you will have more time for the practice. From Phoebe saying, Dear Venerable Ajahn, my question is, yesterday you explained how the mind is not in the same location as the body. When I meditate and start to feel more concentrated, I often feel a lot of energy gathering in my body, and I feel stronger and more focused and energized. What is that energy and why is it gathering there? I thought before that it was the mind, but clearly it's not. It's just a feeling that you feel that it is in the body, but it's actually in your mind. Yeah. When your mind becomes calmer, the mind will become stronger, and it will have more equanimity. But you don't really have to worry where it is. All you have to know is whether it is good for you or not. That's all. Because when you meditate, you are doing it for your mind. The mind is the one who receives the result of your practice, not the body. But don't have to worry where it is. Just know whether it is good for you or not. So this is what meditation is for, to make your mind happy, peaceful, and strong, and also have equanimity to face up to all the troubles of life. Morris Twite, but I can follow you during my work. Okay, good. Antonio Dutra, okay, Ajahn. Sami Riachi, Satu. Chanaka Palaya Guru, Chanaka Palaya Guru. Kindly explain craving to end existence, or craving for non-becoming. Thanks. The meaning of craving for non-becoming, vipava tanha, really doesn't mean to end existence. It means that to crave for not something that is not there. Like when you are sick, you want to be well. So when you want to be well, then you have dukkha, because you cannot get what you want. When you're sick, you will have to be sick. So if you don't want to have dukkha, then you should not have vipava tanha. You should just keep calm and not reacting to your sickness. Let your sickness be, because your sickness is anatta. It is like the weather. You cannot control or force it. You just have to accept it for what it is. Then you will have no dukkha in your mind. Okay. Alfredo Vilela. Hi, Pante. Is possible to do a formal reclamation against Ajahn Mudito for forced sangha? No, you should not do anything. You should just let it be. Let him be. Do not react. Just give compassion and loving kindness. Don't do anything, because it will only create more problem. When you react, he will react to your reaction, and then you will react to his reaction, and you end up being more angry and more hateful. So the best way is just to be calm, remain in equanimity, and let him do whatever he wants to do. He will have to pay the consequence of his action eventually, sooner or later. Janaka Paliya Guru, Tanha, yes, Tanha means craving for being and not being. Craving for being is to crave for being healthy, for instance. And Tanha, craving for not being, is not to be sick. But when you get sick and you have this vipava tanha of not wanting to be sick, then there will be dukkha in your mind. Matthew Khan, thank you, Ajahn. Sadhu, sadhu. Megawati Lal, sadhu. Nakrop Samurai, namaste. Namaste. Phoebe Sang, thank you for answering my question. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Chandaka Paliya Guru, thank you so much. Dylan Alvis, sadhu, sadhu, Bante. Could you explain the nature of four Maha Bhutarupa? Should we see them as some kind of energy linked together, having random behavior? I'm not sure what is the Mahabhutarupa. Can you clarify what is four Mahabhuta Rupa. Okay, dealing with four elements, water, air, heat, and earth. You should see them as being anicca, dukkha, anatta. Okay, they are like the weather. They are parts of the natural world. The water, the air, the fire, and the earth. When they come to combine, they are called formation. And all formation will eventually break up. Like the body, it is formed by the four elements. And eventually it will break up. And the four elements will return to its original state. So this is what we call anicca and anatta. No self in any formation, such as your body and my body. It's just the formation of the four elements. And one day this four element will then breaks up. This formation will breaks up. And the four elements that form the formation will then return to its original state. The water will return to water, air will return to air, fire will return to fire or heat, and earth will return to earth. So if you know that they are just natural thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. They form and then they will break up. Like bubbles, you see bubbles, it formed by the water and then it will break up. If you cling to them when they break up, you can become sad. You will have dukkha. If you know that you cannot cling to them, you just have to let them be. Then there will be no dukkha. Sami Vyachi, I want to leave my house and go to ordain, but my mother is dependent on me, and to a certain extent, the whole family. Is it still right to leave regardless? How do I get over the guilt? Well, just comparing going for ordination like being dead from them, dead from the people that are dependent on you. What happened if you died yesterday or 2 days ago with the blast? Would you feel guilty about it? And how would they survive? They will somehow find a way. And sooner or later they will all die anyway. So you maybe have to think like this, then you won't feel any guilt. Because sometimes you need to do the things that you have to do. Think of the Buddha. He had to leave his whole family. If he didn't do this, he would not become a Buddha. Then we would have no one to guide us to Nibbana. See, once you ordain, you can still, eventually one day in the future, you might be able to support them or help them if they need help. but I'm pretty sure that you're not expendable. You're not indispensable. Let's put it that way. Everybody is dispensable. So when the time comes for you to be separated from them, then it's okay, because you're not doing anything to hurt them. They just have to learn to help themselves, depend on themselves, that's all. Naomi Jonas, hello Ajahn. Is there a difference in the contemplation practice between an unenlightened person who wishes to become a Sotapanna and the contemplation practice of a Sotapanna who wishes to become a Sakadagami? Or is it the same contemplation that they continue? No, the object of contemplation switches from the Sotapanna, contemplate on the anicca dukkha anatta nature of the body and the namakanda, mainly the feeling. He contemplates until he sees them as being anicca dukkha anatta, and knowing that there's nothing he can do to control the five khandhas. The body will have to get sick, the body will have to get old, the body will have to die. So he accepts the truth and then let the body get old, get sick, or die. This is the object of contemplation for becoming a Sotapanna. Once you have become a Sotapanna, then you move to the next subject, the next problem. The next problem will be your sexual desire. When you have sexual desire, you can have dukkha. You will feel lonely, you will feel restless, agitated, uneasy. So in order to get rid of this sexual desire, you have to contemplate on the asubha nature of the body. Your sexual desire arises because you look at the body as being attractive, good looking. But if you look at the body as being not attractive and not good looking, then you can get rid of your sexual desire. And then your dukkha will then disappear. So this is what you need to do in order to get rid of your sexual desire, by contemplating on the asubha nature of the body, such as looking at the 32 parts of the body, or look at the 10 corpses, 10 stages of corpse. If you can see this, and when your bodies have any sexual desire, then you can use this to eliminate the sexual desire. For an anagami, he can do it half of the time, meaning he can diminish but not entirely eradicate the sexual desire, because his contemplation is not continuous. It's not always there. Sometimes it is there when he has sexual desire. Sometimes it is not there. But if he keeps contemplating more and more and more, eventually this asubha images will remain in his mind all the time. And anytime any sexual desire happens, then this image of asubha will come up and stop the sexual desire. If he can do this all the time, then no sexual desire will be able to arise. Then he will become an anagami. That's the state, that third stage of enlightenment. Once you become, let me read the question first. Or is it the same contemplation that they continue? No, like I said, you switch from the five khandhas to asubha contemplation. And you say the practice of Sakadagami, who wishes to become an Anagami? Well, a Sotapanna would like to become an Anagami because he doesn't want to experience any more dukkha. And the sexual desire is the one that creating dukkha in the Sotapanna mind. So he has to get rid of it by contemplating on asubha. Next question, I so win. I live with a husband who does not know that housework is very oppressive. Even though he says the bill, even though he pays the bills, I always find it unfair for men to assume that all housework is woman's duty. I want to run away. I just don't want to sweep the floor clean. I just don't want to sweep the floor, clean bathroom, make the yard pretty, cook healthy food for the breadwinner. I also have a government job. That is my career. So I am not just a housewife whose value is just around the housework. Is it okay if I break away from all this once and for all? I don't want to have a fight. All verbal fights are not effective. I'm tired of getting mad as I get tired of housework. It never ends. Marriage is a social invention. I can break away from it. I hate housework. I can do it alone. I have been a celibate for 5 years, even in marriage. I am just tired of housework that never ends. What should I do, Ajahn? Should I take leave of housework around an insensitive person husband and break away? I can go stay with my aging mother. Well, it's up to you to decide what you want and whether you can do it amicably or not. If you want to break up with your husband, you might have to discuss with him and make a deal with him. If he agrees, and then you can do it. But if he doesn't agree and he wants to create trouble for you, then what can you do? So sometimes when you're stuck with something and you cannot get away from it, the Buddha says you just have to accept it. This is the consequence of your past karma. So you just have to be patient and wait for the right situation to arise that will allow you to be free from your husband. So this is something that you have to consider. Okay, I hope I answer your question. But even if you live alone or live with your mother, you still have to do some housework because this is part of life. As a monk, I have to do my housework. I have to clean my bowl. Fortunately, I have other monks to do it for me. I still have to clean my room, sweep, and mop the floor. So that is housework as long as you have a body to look after. But you can minimize them, that's all. By living simple, having as little as possible, then there will be less work for you to do. But life is like this. Everybody has to do some housework. Okay, the next question, Ricardo Antunes. Venerable Ajahn, what is the difference between contemplation and mindfulness? Contemplation is investigating the nature of the body, for instance. This is contemplation. You want to investigate to see that the body is impermanent and is being anatta, no self. And if you see it as permanent, as yourself, then you can have dukkha in your mind. Because when the body starts to change, the body starts to get sick, and your mind would not want it to get sick. The mind will have this vipava tanha, the desire not to be. When that happens, you will have dukkha or suffering in your mind. But when you investigate to see that the nature of the body is all constantly changing, and that you cannot stop it from changing, it can become sick anytime, and you cannot stop it. So if you don't want to have any dukkha, you have to stop your desire for the body not to get sick, and accept sickness when it comes. Then you will get rid of your dukkha. This is what we call contemplation. Mindfulness is the focusing your mind on one object to stop your mind from thinking. So these are two separate, different practices which you cannot do both at the same time. You have to do one or the other. Normally when we start practice, we do mindfulness first, because we need mindfulness to calm the mind, to get into samadhi, to get equanimity. Once we get samadhi and equanimity, when we come out of meditation, then we can practice contemplation, investigating the nature of the body, of feelings, and of the mental states of mind. Deep gratitude and greeting from Ricardo, from Uruguay. Hi, how are you? I remember now you were here at Wat Yan before. Next question, Check Lin Tan. Greeting Tanajan. Thank you for taking your time to teach us, explaining the Dhamma in plain English and easy to understand way. Many things that I read in the suttas made a lot more sense to me after hearing your explanation. I am wondering if Tanajan can explain the 7 bhujanga to us with deep gratitude. I think the 7 bhujangas are the 7 factors of enlightenment, and I cannot remember all of them because I focus only just on the 2 or 3 factors of enlightenment, that of being mindful, mindfulness, samadhi, and contemplation, which is Dhamma Vicaya in the 7 bhujangas. Dhamma Vicaya means the contemplation of Dhamma, or the investigation of Dhamma. So you need to have the 4 factors of enlightenment before you can become enlightened. This is about all I can say about the bhujangas right now, because basically you need to have mindfulness, you have to have samadhi or equanimity, then you need to have Dhamma Vicaya, investigating the Dhamma, or contemplation of the Dhamma. Then you can become enlightened. From Amir Malik Adan, can we use the 4 elements to investigate the body? Yes, when you investigate the body, you want to see that the body comes from the 4 elements. The food that you eat has the earth element and the water element. The water that you drink has the water element, is the water element. The air that you breathe is the earth, is the air element. And the heat in your body is the fire element. when you have this four element inside your body, then the body keeps functioning. But eventually, this four element wants to break up, wants to go separate ways. That's when you stop breathing. Then the air element will not enter into your body anymore. It will just leave the body. The water element, the fire element will also leave, leaving just the earth element. The body will just remain the the, the earth element part of the body. Okay, now Naomi Jonas, thank you, Ajahn. So for an unenlightened person who has not yet attained Sotapanna, is it correct to say that it is not necessary to practice the Asupa or corpses unless strong sexuality desire has arisen in our mind? That is preventing us from meditating or doing the contemplation of the three characteristics of the body and feeling. That's right, especially if you are a monk or a nun. You take up the vow of celibacy, then you have to use this Asupa contemplation to curb or to control your sexual desire. If you cannot, then you might find it difficult to remain as a monk or as a nun. But if you don't have any problem with sexual desire, then you don't need to do any contemplation yet of the Asupa. Keep concentrating on the nature of the body and the feeling. Okay, the next question is from Ariane Young. Dearest Ajahn, how do I find compassion for those who won't wear masks and thus put others at risk? I live in the United States where we are not managing well. Well, it's not compassion that you need to deal with these people. What you need is equanimity to remain not reactive to their action. Because when you react and you find that you cannot force them to do what you want to do, then you will have dukkha, you will have suffering. So you have to look at them as being anatta. They are like the weather. You cannot force the weather to do what you want the weather to do. You just have to accept the weather for what the weather wants to do. If the weather wants to snow, you cannot do anything to stop it. So if people want not to wear masks, there's nothing you can force them to do it. So you just have to accept their action with equanimity. Then you will not feel bad. Right now you feel bad and you don't have compassion for them. But if you look at the consequence of not wearing masks, sooner or later they will contact the virus and then they will suffer. Then you will have compassion for them. If you look at the consequence for people not wearing masks, that sooner or later they will contract the disease, the virus, and then they will have to get sick. By looking at this, you can become compassionate for them. Okay, next question. Daniel Pistolas. Hello, Ajahn. Once my meditation went so well that I realized that every pleasure pales in comparison, and I would not need anything else. Since then, I am longing for more meditation. Is that Sotapanna or am I deluded? I think it depends on whether you have got rid of your attachment to the five khandhas or not to become a Sotapanna. If you merely meditate for calm, for equanimity with mindfulness, you haven't reached the Sotapanna stage yet. In order to reach the Sotapanna stage, you have to investigate the nature of the five khandhas, namely the body and the feeling, and being able to let go of your attachment. Once you can do this, then you can become a Sotapanna. from Nambiti, Namaskar Ajahn. Okay, next question from Satya Ku. Good morning, Ajahn, and good evening from London. No question, but only wanted to express our sincere appreciation to Ajahn for your kindness, compassion, patience, time, and effort in holding these online Dhamma sessions. It has enabled people regardless of race, nationality, and country all over the world to participate peacefully and harmoniously. The beneficial and skillful Dhamma techniques that Ajahn has taught will encourage us to practice, train, and develop to be a better person in mind and body. This in turn we can bring back to family, friends, society, and workplace. The good qualities and virtues we have learned from Ajahn. Thank you. By the way, Satyaku, thank you for your generosity in donating some money for the school. I think everybody at school are very happy for your kindness and generosity. Thank you. From Naomi Jonas, thank you, Ajahn. From Chalomo, Chantideva Springer, lots of love, I guess, with all the hearts in it. Next question from Gleb Otwich. Good morning, Ajahn. Is it correct to say that memory sanya disturb the citta? If you try to meditate, then sanya can disturb your mind. Also, once in meditation, it's good to stay with the citta. Once in meditation, you should stay with your meditation object until your citta becomes completely calm. Then you can stay with the citta. Just keep watching the citta and try to keep it calm for as long as possible with your mindfulness. If your citta start to act with sanya or samkara, then you should use mindfulness to stop it again by concentrating on the meditation object or reciting a mantra. Then you can keep the mind calm for a longer period of time. And even after you come out of meditation, you can still use mindfulness to curb your samkara and sanya so that your mind can remain calm even after you come out of meditation. Okay. You can still send in your question. I hope to be with you for about 1 hour. Right now it's about 44 minutes into the meeting, so we have about 16 minutes left. Next question from Arian Young. Ajahn, thank you for your wisdom and kindness. We'll work on practicing equanimity and think of it like the weather. My computer lost connection due to storm, but did hear most of your helpful answer. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You can watch this video again after the live stream has finished. It will remain on the Facebook page for you to watch again. It's about 4 a.m. in Thailand right now. In about 1 hour and a half, I will have to be on my way for my daily alms collection. So in about 15 minutes, I will have to stop this meeting and get ready for my new day activity, starting with collection, alms collection. Tiem Hua Tan, Sadhu, Sadhu. Such a cool Anumodana Ajahn. Thank you very much for letting us know about this opportunity to do dana for such a great vision and cause. I have already told you about this school. This school was founded by the late Supreme Patriarch of Thailand, the founder of Wat Yana Sangwararang, where I'm staying. He wants to give some basic education, Buddhist education, for boys who study from grade 7 to grade 9, so that then they should know something about how to be a proper Buddhist. So he started this school as a boarding school, and the student doesn't have to pay any money to study in the school for 3 years. Everything is paid for: room and board, tuition, books, and after 3 years, these boys learn how to be respectful, learn how to keep the precept, and learn how to be grateful to others, for instance. From Chanaka Paliya Guru, dear Ajahn, is physical health a prerequisite for success in meditation? It's not prerequisite, but it is helpful to be healthy. But you don't have to be a healthy nut. Just keep the body going and strong enough to practice in your meditation. But people can attain enlightenment while they are sick also. Like the Buddha's father, when he became ill, the Buddha went to teach Dhamma, and he became enlightened 7 days before his death. But if you don't have the ability to become enlightened in that short period of time, then you need to have good physical health. You need to be healthy in body, so that then you can use the body to do your practice. If you're sick, then you'll find it difficult to practice. Sami Vyachi Sadhu, Chanaka Paliya Guru Sadhu. From Gleb Aldrich, when piti sukha arises in meditation, is it better just to stay with sensation of breath, meditation object, and ignore the piti sukha? Because yes, you should keep on focusing on your meditation object, because piti sukha is only part of the result that you get, but not the main part of the result. What you want to get to is emptiness, calm, and equanimity and bliss, which you have to do more concentration before you can get there. If you stop concentrating, stop focusing on your breath, and enjoy piti sukha, then you will not go any further than that. So you need to keep on focusing until your mind fall into the Appana Samadhi. When this happens, it's like falling from a high place, and then your mind becomes completely still and happy, and not reacting. If ignore the piti sukha, will the meditation go deeper? No, I just answered your question. If you want to go deeper, you have to keep on concentrating on your meditation object. When it finally reaches the deepest part, it will be like falling into from a high place, or feeling like you have your last breath. It's like you feel like you give up your last breath when the mind becomes completely calm. So don't be afraid when this happens. It's just It's just a feeling. It's not real. You're still breathing. You still have your breath, and you won't die. From Tiram Watan Mahasatu to Ajahn, all your answers and teaching us so short and precise, so easy to understand. Once again, Mahasatu for all your guidance. Hope I can one day meet you in person. I heard so many great experiences from people who had seen you personally. Hope my wish can come true. Okay, just don't cling to your hope. If it comes true, fine. If it doesn't come true, it doesn't matter. Because you don't need to meet me in person. What you need more to do is to practice. Because by meeting me will not help you or get the result from your practice. You have to do the practice to get the result, which is much better than meeting me personally. When you have experienced the result from your practice, then you'll find that there's no need for you to meet anybody. You don't need to meet the Buddha. You don't need to meet his noble disciples, because you meet the Dhamma, which represents the Buddha and his noble disciples. So you should focus on practicing to meet the Dhamma. Then you'll meet the Buddha and the Sangha as well at the same time. And they are the real Buddha and the real Sangha, because they are within your heart, and they will stay with you forever. If you go to meet a person, an Ajahn, you see him briefly, then afterwards you have to return home again. So you'll be without him again. But if you practice the Dhamma until you come to meet the Dhamma, then this Dhamma will stay with your heart, stay with your mind forever. Okay, looks like we don't have any more questions. Or maybe somebody is still typing the question. So I'll wait for a few more minutes to see. If there are no more questions coming in, then I can then stop this meeting. And Grave Outreach, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu. Daniel Pistolas, dearest Ajahn, what part of my practice will survive death if I don't reach Sotapanna in this life? Mindfulness will survive, will go with you. Everything that you do with your mind will go with you. The amount of contemplation on anicca, dukkha, anatta that you have done will go with you. So whatever you practice, you can keep it with you when you go. Whatever you get from your body, you will not be able to take it with you. Like your money, your husband, your wife, your family, your possession, things like that. Things that you get by using your body, you will not be able to take it with you. But anything that you do with your mind, you can take it with you. Like mindfulness, wisdom, samadhi, effort, this will go with you in your next life. So you don't have to start all over again, like with the body. With a new body, you will have to start all over again. You will have to start to acquire things with your body again. I'm waiting for some more questions. If you are typing them, in the meantime, I stay silent so I can take a little breathe from answering and reading your question. Okay. From Matthew Kahn, can appreciation of scientific and technological achievement be part of the practice, or is it an attachment I should work to let go of? Yes, all the technological and scientific achievements are external from your mind. You cannot take them with you. So it's better to get rid of your attachment to them and concentrate on your practice to get samadhi and panya, which is a much better form of achievement. The mental achievement far are more useful and more beneficial to your mind than the physical achievement, scientific and technological achievement. So you should switch from your appreciation of scientific and technological achievement to achievement of the mental achievement, such as being able to develop mindfulness, samadhi, and panya. From Sami Riachi, how to know if we have bodhisattva past life vows. When you are strongly attached to any one of the parami of perfection, usually metta and dana parami. If you are strongly attached to being nice and kind and want to do things for other people more than doing it for yourself. So instead of going to meditate, you feel bad when you go meditate. You feel good when you help people, make other people happy. Then this is possibly that you might have taken the bodhisattva vow in your past life. So you have to stop this vow by use reason. If you keep helping other people, when can you start practicing? Like Ajahn Man, he helped other people for many years until he became about 60 years old, when he decided that he has to leave everybody alone and went to live alone in the forest and became enlightened eventually. Matthew Khan, love, okay. Matthew Khan, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, I have about one minute or two left before I say goodbye to you all. Okay, Daniel Pistolas. This is probably the last question. When I see people of the other gender, I often bring up Asubha contemplation. At the same time, I see the danger of the entanglement that comes with it, all the trouble that comes with it. But sexual desire is not completely gone. It feels like a habit. Yes, you have to keep stopping this sexual desire by not doing it. Then this sexual desire will eventually disappear. When you first start contemplating and start refusing your sexual desire, doesn't mean that it will go away completely. It will take a while. Every time you have sexual desire, you just have to resist and not do what your sexual desire wants you to do. And then eventually your sexual desire will then be completely gone. 16 years, grab outreach. I'm not sure what you're referring to, or 60 years. You mean to become enlightened? The Buddha says 7 days, 7 months, or 7 years. So just keep on practicing, okay? I think I run out of time now. It's 1 hour. So thank you all for joining this discussion. I hope you can learn from your question and other people's question as well. And I'll come back again the next time. In the meantime, please keep on practicing and be happy and be well. Thank you and goodbye.